Here we go in 3, 2, 1.
Folks, what is up, and welcome back to the Vol Talk podcast. You are here with, as always, Austin and Blake. He is Austin, and I am Blake, and we are here to talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. And Austin, we are back in happy territory this week. We are back in the W column. Back in the win column with the Tennessee men's basketball. So we will be getting into a review of the Mississippi State game, where the Tennessee Volunteers defeated the Mississippi State Bulldogs by a hefty margin. Then we will also be talking about a little bit of football news. Austin's going to bring us some details on some betting lines for next year related to our Vols. Little bit of surprise. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, with the basketball team, we're going to be doing a little preview of the upcoming game on Saturday, which is a big one. A lot of storylines for that. Austin Bruce Pearl, former coach. He loved the Vols. We loved Bruce Pearl. We're going to be facing him again. Number 1 ranked Auburn. It's going to be a big game.
It is, man. Excited for that one. But I guess we can just hop right into the Mississippi State game. You good with that?
Yeah, so I think let's just kick it off. I mean, it was a good game. We won, and I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, Austin, but Chaz Lanier maybe woke up a little bit again.
He did. I think I'll start. It was a top 15 win, and I just want to start with this stat because I saw it online. Somebody shared it in a group chat. Really interesting stat. Tennessee is now 17-6 in its last 23 games against AP top 15 teams. Just speaks to what Rick Barnes has done with this program. I mean, really, before Rick Barnes, this program was a dead program. Like, the basketball program really wasn't that great historically, really outside of the Bruce Pearl run that he had for a short period of time. So, I mean, again, speaks to what the greatness of Rick Barnes, and really cool to see. And hopefully we can turn that into a Final Four before it's over. But I think we get caught up in that discussion a little too much. Like, have we got to a Final Four yet? Like, when are we going to get to a Final Four? When are we going to win a national championship? There's something to being consistently good and having a team that you want to root for consistently because they're actually showing up game after game, season after season, getting in the tournament, making it interesting to watch. So, shout out to Rick Barnes for that. Another huge win for this season, though, in particular. And like you said, dude, Chaz Lanier had a great game. Still, though, I will say he didn't show anything new, right? He scored how I expect him to score. Catch and shoot threes. That's really how he got going early, and he really did do most of his work in the first half of this game. He started off hot, like literally first offensive possession, he hits a catch and shoot three, and it kind of from there he kind of had a look in his eye. It seemed like he was about to go off. It seemed like he was about to have a pretty good night, and he did, especially in the first half. So yeah, I mean, listen, he has that in him, and I've said that. My only problem is he's limited, and I've mentioned that several times on the show. But when he's on, and you saw it in this game, dude.
Yeah, and we need, like, kind of like you're alluding to, we need more consistency, right? Hopefully, this this performance continues on over the next few games because, again, we're gonna preview the upcoming Auburn game against number 1 Auburn, and it doesn't get any easier from there. This next stretch of basketball games is an absolute ringer of a gauntlet, and so we're gonna need him to maintain that level of play. But you're right, it's somewhat concerning again in terms of the ceiling. It's good that he bounced back finally, right, in kind of a big way in terms of his offensive production, but it doesn't really change the questions that we were having in the last episode and beyond. Because to me, I look at that and like you've talked about, we're not huge X's and O's with basketball, but it seems like if he's still just kind of producing how he's always produced, catch and shoot, then that got shut down before by other teams, right? And their defenses. And Mississippi State maybe just didn't scheme well or didn't plan well enough to be able to shut that down, that one dimension down. But to your point, there's got to be some other dimension that he can turn to if a team does scheme for his one trick.
Yeah, I think it mostly comes down to someone on the team has to be able to do that. Someone on the team has to be their own shot creator. Because Chaz, even in this game where he put up 23, and that's special. Someone who can shoot threes at the level he can is really special. But you say you're looking for a level of consistency. That's never really going to happen, though, with his game, I think. Like, he's not going to consistently put up 20 to 30 points just by the nature of how he plays the game.
Right.
It's a very volatile way to score. Unless you have someone
so dependent on how the night's going and if they're falling and how the other team's defending you and
exactly. The relying on 3-pointers is very volatile. That's the reality. Unless you're Steph Curry, which he's not, and even Steph can create his own shot, which Chaz cannot. Even if you're that level of 3-point shooter, you're not consistently going to hit 45% from three. You're just not. And listen, he didn't even in this game. It's not like he had an insane percentage, but I just don't expect it. And I'm not taking away from what he did in this game. The fact that he can do this is really helpful for the team. But for one, we haven't seen it on the road yet. We have not seen it at all on the road. And for two, again, going back to my original point, you're not going to see that game in, game out, especially on the road. So, great game from Chaz, and hopefully I'm wrong, right? I would love to be wrong. I would love for him to do this against Auburn. And if he does have a performance like that against Auburn, maybe we change our tune. But he still hasn't developed more parts of his game. But that's where I would like to see other players step up. Igor Milicic watch, baby. Listen, man, he didn't put up crazy stats in this game. If you're a scoreboard watcher, you will say Igor did not have a great game. But
he had 3 points maybe, I think.
Listen, dude, don't be a scoreboard watcher. I watched the game, okay? And his plus minus was tied for the highest on the team, meaning basically what was the point margin when he was in the game. That was tied for best on the team, 17 with Jordan Gainey. And listen, point minus doesn't tell the whole story, but it's part of the story. And he just doesn't get a ton of opportunities to score the basketball. So when you see 3 points, you're like, oh man, Igor didn't show up. But he's doing so much. His defense is so good. Dude, he had a possession where he... It was like a defensive rebound, or no, maybe it was an offensive rebound into an assist. Yes, that's what it was. He grabbed an offensive rebound. I can't remember who shot for him to grab it. Then he immediately saw Chaz Lanier wide open and kicked it out to him. The way he sees the floor is so incredible, dude. Like, for a big man, he sees the floor so well. So even though he doesn't have a crazy stat line, I feel like he still made a huge impact on the team. And same with Zakai. Zakai had 5 steals, dude.
5 steals. Crazy.
Unbelievable on defense, bro. There was I think a 2 or 3 possession stretch where he got a steal each possession. At least a 2 possession stretch in that game. Zakai is just such a weapon, dude. Especially against these great guards. That was we talked about going in the game. That was their strength was their guards. And Zakai shut him down, dude. He did. He shut him down. He had him on clamps all day long. Defense stood out in this game. I told you after the Vanderbilt game, that was the first game I felt like the defense just wasn't there. Even in games where we gave up more points, I felt like they gave more effort, were contesting more shots. This game totally changed. I knew it was going to come back because that's what Rick Barnes does. And it was clamps once again. We were contesting every shot, making everything super difficult, and the announcers kept bringing up how Mississippi State doesn't want to rely on the 2-point or doesn't want to rely on the 3-point shot and jump shots. They want to try to get to the paint, get some high percentage plays. We didn't allow that to happen. Our big men did not allow that to happen. Akpara and Milicic, man, locking it down in the paint. 2 really good defenders. Oh, and Cade Phillips. Cade Phillips as well. Got a shot at Cade Phillips as well. they're all really good defenders and give a lot of effort defensively. So we forced Mississippi State to rely on those 3-point shots from their guards, and Zakai didn't let it happen, dude. At the end of the day, Zakai didn't let it happen. So, yeah, I'm not surprised at all the defense bounced that back, but it was a huge defensive performance. So, shout out to the defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not this simple, obviously, but if you think about it in layman's terms, 5 steals theoretically prevents 2 points from the opposing team, obviously 2 or 3, and then theoretically allows you to score 2 points. So it's theoretically a 4-point differential on 5 steals. 4 times 5 is 20 points. I mean, that's just, again, it's not that simple, but it's just an absolute huge performance from Zakai, as always.
Yeah, of course. But to your point, dude, it's just like football, right? Turnovers, forcing turnovers in football is so crucial, dude. Just like, it's the same thing in basketball. You steal a possession. And to your point, not only do you prevent a score, but you have an opportunity to score yourself. So, yeah, man, turnovers are so massive. And he just does that at such a high level. We forgot to mention he became the all-time steals leader. I believe that was in the game I actually went to, the Georgia game. All-time steals leader at Tennessee. He's a Tennessee legend, dude. Like, at the end of the day, he's a Tennessee legend. And he maybe one of the best defensive players we've ever had. Listen, I'm not a Vol basketball historian, but, defensive player of the year last year in the SEC. He's having as good as a defensive year this year. So yeah, man. He's awesome. He's awesome to watch defensively, but he's also runs the offense, and that's really valuable as well. So also have to shout out Meshack in this game as well. Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something about Zakai?
No, I was just gonna say ZZ Top, man. One day on this pod we might be handing out the Zakai Ziegler Award. For
I like
player
that
award in terms of best defensive output, because he's just an absolute legend. But
that's a good idea. I'm gonna put that one in the notes. That's a good idea.
Write that
down. So yes, have to shout out Meshack. Meshack also super good defender. But dude, he was getting some offense going in this game. A couple jump hooks. Listen, he's told to shoot open shots when he has them, those open threes, because you have to keep the other defense honest. If you simply don't guard Meshack and he doesn't shoot those threes, he's never going to be guarded, right? So I understand why they tell him to take them. In this game, it was effective. He was pretty effective on the offensive side of the ball, which he's typically not the biggest scorer, but when he does score, like when guys like Meshack can contribute offensively, or when Zakai can contribute offensively at a high level, scoring wise, like obviously he is there with the assist and runs the offense and whatnot, then, dude, it's going to be pretty hard to stop us, because that opens up Lanier, that opens up the big guys, Milicic. So, yeah, man, it was an all-around effort, and it showed in the point, total, right? We were dominated pretty much the whole game. We kind of let them to come back in the second half. They made it pretty close in the second half, but then we pulled away again. And, it was never really in danger, honestly.
And this is a good Mississippi State team, right? The SC is just absolutely loaded. And so this is a good Mississippi State team. And again, it was at home at Townsend Bowling, right? And so we got it's almost, I'm almost kind of starting to feel a Heupel effect this year on the basketball team in terms of, dropping these away games. Just a huge win overall, dominated the game. And like you said, with the exception of, when they started to kind of make it close. And so encouraging for me to see, again, bouncing back, and putting out a big performance.
Definitely. More Igor Milicic propaganda from your boy. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm trying. I love analytics in football, and I love just analytical things in football and learning more about it. And I'm going to try to get that with basketball. I'm trying to find good sources. If you have good sources on it, let me know. But one of the analytical stats in basketball, which isn't the best indicator, but it is a indicator, it is a tool, is PER, player efficiency rating. Do you want to know who is 0.1 behind Zakai Ziegler for second in PER on the team?
I'm guessing it's Great Value Joker.
Correct. You are correct, sir. Chaz Lanier, who's almost averaging 20 points a game, is like 3 points behind Great Value Joker in PER. Listen, Zakai being high in PER, not surprising at all. He's a great passer. He's like probably the third or fourth best scorer on the team. Gets a ton of steals, which plays into PER. But dude, listen, when you have Great Value Joker dropping 3 points, a lot of fans probably don't notice him in the game, but he's literally only 0.1 behind Zakai in player efficiency rating, and he doesn't even get a lot of opportunities. He doesn't. He really only gets opportunities when he grabs a rebound. Like, the offense never runs through him, so I would love to see the offense run through him more, especially since guys like Chaz have not really shown the ability to score inside, right? He's not shown the ability to drive to the rim. So at least give a guy like Great Value Joker an opportunity to do that. I just found that interesting, dude. I mean, he's like 3 points higher than Chaz, and I think Chaz is third on the team. So something to keep in mind.
That's a pretty big margin there between him and Chaz. And man, I'm just gonna say this. To me, this is reminiscent of, someone who just so happened to put $100 into an Apple stock in the 1980s. It's like Igor Milicic is he's no one. He's not a household name. No, stock is low, but Austin Douglas is putting the house on this guy.
I'm fine, all of it.
He is Austin he's buying all that stock, and then when it goes to the moon, baby, people can refer back to Vol Talk. Okay,
sure.
We're gonna go viral. Maybe this episode will go viral when Igor Milicic becomes a star, and folks, hey, did anyone call this? Absolutely, they did. The Vol Talk podcast.
Correct.
Austin called it on the money. Biggest turnaround in all of fandom. Love to see it.
Hey, listen, I just needed more time to watch him, more time to watch his game. Because I was intrigued in the Arkansas game. You think it was all disrespect? I was intrigued. I was like, okay, I don't know if I want the guy shooting that much. I don't know if I want him handling the ball. But hey, listen, dude. I didn't realize everything that he had in his game, everything he had in his arsenal. And the announcers keep bringing up how he was like a 35% three-point shooter in Charlotte. So he's getting the bad end of variance with his three-point shot right now. If he can start hitting 35% here, watch out, brother. It's time to buy Igor Milicic stock, bro.
Stock is to the moon, baby. Stock is, you heard it here, folks. Listen, this is not financial advice, primarily because there's not actually a stock related to Igor Milicic. But if there were, scoop it up.
Right, correct. That's exactly what I'm telling you right now.
Scoop it up here first. Folks, let's take a second and just say, hey, look, please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We want to continue to grow this podcast, and we want y'all's feedback as well, so please drop us comments. Let us know in the comments. What do you think about Igor Milicic? Is Austin onto something here, or are you a scoreboard watcher? There is a right and wrong answer to that question, so let us know in the comments.
And let me know if I'm saying his name right, because for the love of God, I want to get the man's name right. I think it's Igor Milicic. If I'm saying it wrong, I will try my best to get it right. We also call him Great Value Joker here. Listen, man, he's earned a nickname.
Maybe we'll stick with Great Value Joker. And maybe one day when that stock does go to the moon, we'll up that ante up to the private selections Joker. So
if he gets more opportunity, yes.
Listen, folks, I know most of our listeners, just like Austin and I, are not high-class people. But just so y'all know, Private Selections is the Kroger brand. Okay, so that's one day he's gonna bump up to that level. Austin, any other notes from the game? Any other kind of big headlines from the Mississippi State game?
No, I can't think anything in particular. Just high level, big win. Kind of needed to have it. I think Rick Barnes, someone was saying on the broadcast, I might have misheard him, that Rick Barnes said it was a must-win for them. That's interesting coming from the coach. If it wasn't him, it was somebody else, some analyst or whatever. But I mean, you could kind of feel that. It's like we're back at home. We just had a really rough loss to Vanderbilt just by the way it ended. Because listen, losing on the road is fine, but just the way it ended, like you had an opportunity and you didn't take it. So, yeah, it did kind of feel that way because, as you said, when we started the show, we're going to Auburn, and that's number one team on the road in the SEC. That is a tall task. So it's good to pick up this Mississippi State win before heading into the tougher part of our schedule.
You got to get that momentum going. You got to get the snowball going. And at the end of the day, you just need W's, right? Because as we've talked about, we've got a gauntlet, and there are going to be L's that still come this season. And so, in terms of our seeding, you gotta pick them up. And so I like that. If it was Rick Barnes or whoever it was, I like viewing it as hey, we gotta get this momentum going, and they did. They won the game, and so that is good news. And like you said, we're going to get into the Auburn preview here in a moment. Huge game coming up. Really going to be a test of what this team is made of. But so stay tuned for that. But before we hop into that, Austin, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's throw a little curveball, and let's talk about our football news.
Yep.
So you wanted to particularly talk about some data that came down. Well, let me start by saying this, okay? Because I gotta say that I gotta get on my soapbox real quick.
Do it.
AP poll doesn't mean anything, right?
Correct.
But the final AP poll came out. Tennessee number 9 in the final AP poll. Shout out to Heupel. Hey, it's the first time in a long time we have finished in the top 10 in the AP poll, and or at least consistently, like we have. But I don't put a whole lot of value in the AP poll. But dude, Boise State came in at 8 above us, and even Arizona State I have question marks about at 7. But man, just what a
I
joke.
didn't see Boise was ahead of us. That's kind of ridiculous. Arizona State, I kind of understand, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The poll itself doesn't matter to me that much. But you are right to shout out Heupel, right? I mean, what he's done here is notable, dude. I mean, I think we get caught up in the championship talk a little much. I mean, two things can be true, right? We can appreciate what Heupel has done here and what he got us out of, and you can also have questions whether he'll be able to get over the hump or not. Those things can be true at once. I will say, though, like, what he has done here is, like, it's nothing short of a miracle considering what he inherited. And and I am very appreciative of where he's taken us. And we also probably should touch on, even though we were looking at the Notre Dame game live, Ohio State ended up taking the game, and they won the national championship. They were a team possessed. We literally lit that team on fire. Listen, I mean, I think the problems, like, I don't want to be too negative since we're shouting out Heupel, but the problems we mentioned on the season review are still true. And some of, like, the recruiting things and things like that, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to beat a team like Ohio State. But, dude, this is a team. Ohio State went on one of the greatest postseason runs ever. And I do think just psychologically, we would feel different about the 2024 season had we got Penn State's schedule in the playoffs. We would. We would be in the Final Four, and we would have lost to another really good team. And I think we were probably better than what we showed in the Ohio State game. At the end of the day, I think we were. I think we would have probably looked better against pretty much every other team in the field. Pretty much every other team.
I think so too. I think honestly, even Texas. I truly.
Oh,
now
yeah.
we know Georgia would have been a tough game, right? On a neutral site, maybe we play Georgia a little closer. Georgia's really talented. Kirby Smart has that team running well, especially against us. But even at Texas, I think we would have put up a good showing against. And so I think you're absolutely right. In terms of what it would have, and this is not the bellyache about it, but what could have been had we gotten, one of these lucky, insane draws that Penn State, Notre Dame, got the path that they had to the Final Four. Would have been nice, but you're absolutely right, man. At the end of the day, we lost to Ohio State, which clearly showed themselves to be the most talented team in the country, best team in college football this year. And so that, again, it doesn't feel good to have lost like that. I did see something where Kirk Herbstreit claims that he either talked to Ryan Day or someone related to the program, essentially implied that the Tennessee takeover of the stadium kind of lit a fire under the team. And we talked about that. We said, hey, look, this is going to give them, like this should, especially if they still believe in their, yeah, if especially if they still believe in their coach, this is going to kind of fire them up. And so what that doesn't take away, can't talk, take away from me is, what it doesn't take away from me is that our team, a lot of our players and our coaches didn't seem to respond with fuel and fire to the fact that their fans are supporting them like that. And that is still frustrating to me. It doesn't surprise me that Ohio State got fired up from that, but it is frustrating to me that, dude, I get it. Ohio State was a team possessed, but you should have been a team possessed with your fans showing out for you like that.
Yeah, and I won't rehash all the effort things and things like that. They got out schemed, they got out effort, they got out everything, right? That's how you got to that conclusion in that game. But yeah, listen, I mean, I think I do view the season a little bit differently. I still have a bad taste in my mouth with how it ended, and I will have to say this as well, because I've seen a lot of this discourse, and this is the only platform right now I have, Ball Talk, so I'm going to get it out here. For all the anti-playoff people out there who think we should go back to the BCS, dude, I mean, I've never heard a more boomer take in my life than that. Like, dude, stop. They're literally remembering like their childhood and the way they grew up and things like that, and they're looking at it nostalgic with nostalgia. Nobody wants to go back to the BCS, dude. Nobody. It's idiotic. Every other sport at every other level has a playoff system, dude. Every single one. Okay? There's a reason for that. Because in the BCS system, the best team in the country would not have been given the opportunity to play for a championship. Ohio State ran through everyone. And I'm an Ohio State hater. Breaking news on Vol Talk. Austin, the Tennessee fan who Ohio State beat the crap out of, and my second team, because our dad's from Michigan, I hate Ohio State. But they should have been given the opportunity to play for a national championship, because guess what? They were the best team.
They were the best team.
They were the best team. And without a playoff system, they were never going to be given the opportunity to do so. So, even though they lost to Michigan and people are like, they should be punished for that. They were, with the seeding. They weren't given a bye week. There was punishment for it, but they still, through the punishment and through the hardest road, I might add, through the hardest road to a national championship, they still won one. So, give them credit. And stop talking about the damn BCS when you had teams like 2004 Auburn, who went undefeated SEC champion, never got a chance to play for a national championship. Those kids will never know what it's like, and now grown men now, will never know what it's like to win a national championship in football, even though they did everything they could to try to get there.
Yeah, honestly, it's a travesty, an absolute travesty that college football went so long without a college football playoff. You've talked about that before. Now, I will say this to a little bit of these folks' credit. It would be nice if we can eliminate a little bit of the bias from the playoff selection committee, so maybe get a little computer action in, kind of throw that in the rankings.
We've mentioned that, but people want a two championship system.
Yeah, the 1 and 2 team, which is just foolish.
Dude, come on, man. Like, come on. You're living under a rock. This is not the Stone Age, brother. Okay? We have a playoff system for a reason. Because Okay, yeah, you really want to take a team like Ohio State, the most talented team in college football, out of the postseason because they lost a single game to Michigan? Listen, like, they're, I mean, listen, they are punished enough for losing that game just because of what that game means to them,
Right.
okay? They don't need to be punished even more by not even be given an opportunity to play for a national championship. And how about Notre Dame? In the BCS era, that team would have never been given an opportunity to play for a national championship because they lost to NIU. But they proved they were the second best team in the country because they went through their side of the bracket. We need a playoff system in college football. That's the bottom line. It's best for the sport.
Now
Because
that doesn't change that the seating is all jacked up.
correct.
And it doesn't change the fact that maybe 12 teams is maybe a little too much. But honestly, the fact that there is a playoff does help eliminate some of the bias in terms of, or at least account for the bias, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, okay, maybe they got the rankings wrong, and apparently they did because the higher seeded teams made the run, but the point is that the playoff it truly decides, hey, you know what? And again, there has to be a cutoff, right? There has to be a cutoff, and yes, it does have to be. At the end of the day, you have to win your schedule, and if you drop three, for instance, Alabama fans, right? You can't bellyache. Okay, you dropped 3 games, you got blown out by Oklahoma, right? And so you're out of the playoff. You are not one of the you do not have a chance to show that you're the best team because you have shown that you are not the best team, right? But for all the other teams who are right there, 1 or 2 losses, and they put them in the arena and then figure out who actually is the best. And this year we saw who was actually the best. Unfortunately, I think we helped light that fire under Ohio State, as did Michigan, but they're the best.
They were the best. And just like the first year of the 14 playoff, the number 4 Ohio State wins it. The first year of the 12-team playoff, number 8 seed Ohio State wins it. And I'm not shouting Ohio State out. My point is the seeds, right? Like, to your point, one of the higher seed teams didn't even make the national championship in this new system. So it does prove, in my opinion at least, that at least 8 teams is a valuable asset to have in the playoffs. Now, I agree, they could probably shave it down to 8. They never will. It'll be 12 or it'll go higher. It should definitely not go higher. Listen, because just like in the NFL playoffs, they don't let every team play it. There's a certain criteria you have to meet in the regular season, and that's why all these people who are saying the regular season doesn't matter anymore. You didn't go to college football games this year. I would bet that you did not go to college football games this season because I was at Tennessee, Alabama. Trust me, 102,000 people in the stadium would beg to differ to say that regular season games no longer matter. Okay? They matter a whole lot. Plus, they matter for you to get into the playoffs. Just as Blake mentioned, you lose 3 games as an Alabama team, you are now eliminated from the playoff, and you're eliminated from playoff contention. That's why the regular season still matters. And yes, individual rivalry games still matter as well. So I'm definitely not anti-playoff. I am anti-expansion. Okay, I'm anti-adding more teams because, listen, there is a cutoff as far as talent is concerned in college football. I get that. But at the very minimum, we need 8 teams in the college football playoff. Maybe 10, maybe 12, definitely not 16. But definitely not 2. That's my point. Definitely not 2. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that ran out of the way. We're supposed to talk about 2025 stuff. I had to get that off my chest.
Hey, we got to get it, and it is relevant. Again, it doesn't make us feel any better about the game, and it's not an excuse. And we expect to win national championships, but we can at least know that, to your point, that hey, had we had a different path, we might have made a run, and because it just so happened that our first draw, and we knew this would happen, right? But our first draw was the eventual national champion, the best team in the country, and so At their stadium, we might add, right?
Correct.
Even though we took it over, it was at their stadium. So definitely relevant to bring up the Ohio State win over Notre Dame, um, and and again that kind of final AP poll where we landed after the season. But now let's look ahead a little bit to 2025. You had some interesting stats drop from FanDuel or DraftKings, or who was it?
FanDuel.
FanDuel.
And I have to touch on one other thing from that thing. It's interesting because as fans we always say that we would rather not make the national championship than lose it. I wonder how Notre Dame fans feel about that, because I think the view of Marcus Freeman is completely different now that he went on that postseason run. And I think we'd probably feel differently about Heupel if he did something like that as well. Because once you get to that championship game or you get to that Final Four, it's anyone's ball game, right? You're two games away. It's about getting the opportunity and putting yourself in position to do that. So I think that does matter. But moving on to the 2025 season, some interesting betting lines have dropped from FanDuel. So, I mean, FanDuel, like, that's best of the best as far as sports betting is concerned. One, Tennessee opened up as a 13.5 point favorite against Syracuse in their opening game. Find that pretty interesting. Syracuse won 9 games this year in the regular season. I can't even remember if they won their bowl game. So if they did, shout out Syracuse for winning their bowl game. Maybe a 10-win team. Don't know. But 13.5 point favorites, man, that's a big number. That is a big number.
It is a big number because you and I talked about, Syracuse was a pretty tough draw for our season opener next year because they're not going to be a pushover team. So that is interesting. I don't know if Vegas is favoring the fact that we're returning our quarterback, Nico, or
And Syracuse isn't.
Or what? Yeah, and Syracuse isn't. I don't know, but that is a pretty big line.
It is. Found that one interesting. But the more interesting thing, which I think will spark more discussion, is some of the win totals, man. Some of these win totals are very interesting to me. So I'll just list this SEC Mike. Shout out SEC Mike. He has a kind of below average podcast. Probably not better than Vol Talk, but it's fine. FanDuel, posted by SEC Mike. Georgia win total set at 9.5. Texas set at 9.5. Those are the two largest numbers in the SEC. Tied for the largest number in the SEC, Tennessee set at 9.5, and then you have Alabama at 8.5, LSU at 8.5, and Florida at 6.5. I found those fascinating. I mean, if I would have had to guess, I would think Tennessee is in that 8.5 tier with Alabama, not in the Georgia and Texas tier. But that's what FanDuel set it at, man. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I could agree with that. I mean, I think the under is kind of likely, frankly.
Maybe that's the BVS coming out in you. Just prepping. We've always been averse to, hey, we don't all this off-season hype or postseason hype or whatever you want to call it. Not postseason, preseason hype. Yeah, so maybe a little bit of BVS coming out, but I think to your point, we talked about on the season review for the 2024 season that we're unfortunately losing a lot of talent especially on defense. This historic defense is not going to be what it was this year, and coupled with question marks now on the offense with the receiving core and the stable of running backs and so on and so forth, and how is Nico going to progress? There's so many question marks that it's surprising that betting lines are, which we've talked about, when it Vegas likes to make money. Most unbiased source. They want to make money. Okay, so they're not. There's no bias. They're doing what's going to make money.
It's not a Vol fan.
It's not a Vol fan. So they're saying, hey, we expect Tennessee to either end up with 9 or 10 wins. And we've got a tough schedule next year, man. With Florida and Alabama on the road, and it's
exactly. Tough. That's why. And I don't know if it's BVS, man. I think to your point, everything you pointed out, dude. I'm not sure if this team got better in the offseason. I mean, we have the least amount of transfer portal guys coming in. I mean, that's kind of concerning, especially when there's like actual starting positions we need to fill, especially on the interior of the offensive line. And then you couple that with the fact that our schedule wasn't that tough this past year, but most of the tough games that we played this past season are now going to be on the road this season. It's the exact same schedule, except home and away are flipped in conference play. So, I mean, we got Florida on the road. We got Alabama on the road. You got Georgia at home. Listen, Heupel hasn't beat Kirby Smart yet. And
it's earlier in the year.
It's earlier in the year, which is a factor. And we'll talk about this a lot in the offseason, obviously. We're bringing it up now. We just now into the offseason, literally a week into the offseason technically. And we're already bringing it up. But that game is crucial to me, man. It will tell me if Heupel can finally beat Kirby and if he'll ever beat Kirby. If you can't beat him next year at home with Georgia, I mean, not depleted. It's just not the most talented Georgia team. Like over the last 5 years, definitely not. Probably maybe the least talented Georgia team, and who knows how they'll reload or whatever, what guys will emerge. But my point being, it's an opportunity, and if they don't win that game, I'm not sure how you're getting the 9 wins or 10 wins, because I mean, listen, Florida being at 6.5 is really interesting to me. I feel like DJ Lagway, their quarterback, probably has the most potential in the SEC. Like, he has the highest ceiling right now out of all the returning SEC quarterbacks. So that was fascinating to me. 6.5. Now they have a brutal schedule. Their schedule is brutal once again this upcoming season. So that definitely plays a factor in that. But man, I don't expect us to be favored by the time the Florida game comes around. I mean, it's in the swamp, and this is partly BVS, but. Listen, dude. I mean, you'll have to tell us about Casey Clausen beating them in the swamp, dude. Because none of us, like remember, brother. Like everyone who watches this show don't remember the last time we beat Florida in the swamp, dude. It's been a long, long time, and I mean, I don't know why I should feel we're gonna beat them in the swamp this year. So, I mean, I have a hard time seeing how we get over 9.5. I would be ecstatic if we did, because it means we made the playoffs back-to-back years. But right now, my early prediction is the under on that, bro.
That's unfortunate. For
I mean, what do you think? I mean, what do you think?
No,
you tell the people how you feel about it.
Here's the deal.
Don't make me the bad guy here on Vol Talk.
No, listen. You are a little bit, but the fact of the matter is, look, we're Vols fans, but we also got to talk facts. We're not going to talk nonsense, right? And we're not saying there'd be a difference if we're like, oh, this coaching staff, they can't get it done. These players, they can't get it done. We're winning 7 games next season. That's not what we're saying. It's just we don't have a high level of confidence. We don't have this, kind of. It's not a lock. Put it this way: it's certainly not a lock that we're going to be able to go into the swamp and win. Billy Napier is on the upswing. Unfortunately, we don't like the guy, but he's on the upswing. And to your point, and the talent for Florida, and so I agree with you that it is an interesting line. I would have, if someone asked me before we talked about this, what do you guess? I would guess what you were saying earlier, which is that 8.5 realm, with Alabama, and so we'll see. Again, there's question marks everywhere. Primarily, I think for me on defense, how are we going to be able to maintain some sort of defensive production comparative to what we did this year? Or this past season. So we'll see, but yeah, it would be nice to win in the swamp again, because man, I tell you what, I don't know why that monkey is still on our back, but the swamp ain't as scary as people think it is. Okay, we should own that place. So I would love to get back.
We given bulletin board material early in January too. Come on, man.
I don't. No, we established very early on in this podcast. I think the first episode we said, look, we And honestly, we kind of lied, right? Because we were like, we're not going to disrespect, other teams. We went on to disrespect pretty much every team. Um,
I
I
don't know
called
about
Kent.
that, but
I called Kent State the worst team in college football. I
I
was
mean, you were
correct.
right. You were right
Um,
about that one.
you pointed out how much of a bozo Kalen DeBoer is. You
I
were
mean,
right. Right.
come
So
on, right? Like,
the
give us our
disrespect
credit.
exactly disrespect has been dished, but it was deserved. However, we promised
Uh,
actually that disrespect would be served in multitudes towards the Florida Gators.
that's
Okay,
true. That's fair. We did say that.
so
That's off the table with Florida.
no, I don't have respect for the Swamp. I don't have respect for them. I don't have respect for their program. Um,
And stop right
so
there before you get into a bigger rant, because he'll keep going. I don't have respect for the state of Florida or the people in, like everything. He'll keep going with that
no,
list.
respect to the people of Florida, my fellow Americans. Point is I want to go back down to the Swamp and win. But you're right. At the end of the day, it's we have it's so early to tell, right? It's so early to know how this team is going to progress into next year.
True. The last thing I will say about that line, even though I think, like right now, I think the play is the under. First thing I'll say, it's subject to move. Like by the time we started at 9.5 this upcoming season, then
Right.
it moved to 9, I believe. Listen, it's subject to move. I think it will move down at some point. But how nice is it, bro? That we are in these preseason lines and odds higher than Alabama. Huge.
Oh,
You fools. You thought you had the second best coach in college football. You got duped. You got duped. Brother, that's the best way I can say it. You got absolutely duped. All right?
absolute swindle job from
Swindled.
Kalen DeBoer. Okay,
Totally
he
swindled.
swindled them.
And
Oh my
listen,
gosh.
the win total is correct for Alabama. They should be happy if they win 8 or 9 games. That is now their baseline. And I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, you took Nick Saban's product and you ran it into the ground, and that will just continue to happen, right? They're still recruiting at a high level right now because of Nick Saban's around the program. He has an office. When he finally moves his sus out of that office because he's so sick of what Kalen DeBozo's doing to the program, the recruiting's going to die too. So I'm all here for the downfall of Alabama. If I had to bet for them right now, I'm leaning the under. If I'm just being honest, 8.5, I'm leaning under on that. Not financial advice, by the way. But
Not
yeah,
financial advice,
just
but I mean, I'm betting the house on the under. I don't. I'm pretty much opening the floodgates, for Alabama disrespect at this point too,
same,
because
same
it's
here.
time to own them. Honestly, it's time to own Bryant Denny again as well, right? We unfortunately dropped one in 2023 in Bryant Denny that we could have won, but
Yeah,
it's time.
for sure.
It's time. It's time to start our streak against them. Okay.
Agreed. Agreed. But yeah, interesting opening lines for the season 2025. We'll talk more about it, of course. We have all off season to talk about it. But yeah, man, interesting
Folks,
stuff.
folks can indeed expect us to continue to talk about the Tennessee Volunteer Football Program throughout the offseason. So again, please, if you haven't already, if you love Vol football, if you love Vol basketball, whatever it is, if you love the Vols, first, you wouldn't be watching this video if you didn't. Okay, and so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and turn on the notification bell, and please help us grow this podcast and come along for the ride because it's gonna be interesting. But finally, let's talk about the big old elephant in the room. No pun intended. It's not Alabama. It's the other Alabama team, Auburn basketball.
Talk about the big tiger in the room.
The big tiger in the room. The men's basketball team is headed to Auburn to face our former coach, who we have. It's not like a Lane Kiffin situation. We respect.
Yeah,
Bruce Pearl.
I got love for Bruce Pearl.
We
I
got
always have love for Bruce Pearl. I hope when Rick Barnes retires, we just I mean unload the dump truck at Bruce Pearl's house to bring him home. And listen, I
because
don't want Rick to retire. To be clear, I'm just saying
Right.
that's going to come at some point. I mean, Rick Barnes is getting old. He's going to retire at some point. I would love for Bruce Pearl to come back home.
Yeah, because Bruce Pearl loves us too. I mean, I think
Exactly.
Bruce Pearl would come back in a heartbeat. He loved Tennessee, and so all respect to Bruce Pearl, but they're the number one team in the country,
They are.
and it's gonna be a tough game.
Very tough, dude. I mean, it's on the road against the number one team in the country, and they, to me, I mean, listen, I'm not, I don't follow college football outside of Tennessee a lot, but it seems like, I mean, Auburn is like consensus, like slam dunk number one. Several people thought they should have been ranked above us when we were number one for a stretch. They are really, really good, dude. I mean, there's no other way to put it because Bruce Pearl's a really good coach. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, it's going to be really hard to win on the road against Auburn. Like, what I want to see is a close game. I want to see just a game that's going into the second half, close, interesting ball game, like a heavyweight title fight kind of a matchup, trading blows. It's going to be tough to win at the end. Maybe we don't get it done at the end. I just want to see, like, the process in this game matters to me more than the result does. Because again, like, this is the kind of matchup that's going to be extremely tough to come away with a victory. But if we keep it close, we hang in there, we fight hard, I'll be happy with that.
Be in a position to win, right?
Yes.
Be in a position to be able to win the game. Show essentially, because here's the deal: the committee is not just for our feelings. The committee is going to be looking at that as well, right? And it's like, how do you, if you do lose, how do you play these teams, especially these top teams in the country, be it Florida, be it Auburn, whoever, to show that you belong in that upper seating. And so, yeah, being in a position to win, if we can pull off the win, that would be massive. That'd be huge, especially for the momentum through this gauntlet. Because folks, it does not get easier from here, as we've talked about. We've got plenty of big games coming up after this, but yeah, it's I think you hit the nail on the head. Let's see what the scheme is. Let's see how the players respond on the road. We haven't been great on the road so far in the SEC, and so can you at least put yourself in a position to win? Worst case scenario for me would be another performance like we saw against Florida. I think if
That'd
we
be bad.
have if we have a performance like we did against Florida, then all of a sudden I might be heading towards the panic button potentially, at least in terms of at least relative to what my expectations were for this season.
Yeah, because we've been saying how that Florida game is an aberration, and it's like it was really terrible. We performed terribly, but it was just like a statistical outlier kind of deal. But if you put a performance like that out there again, then all of a sudden we're not talking about a statistical outlier. We're not talking about an aberration. We're talking about a pattern. Um, and listen, we haven't been good on the road this year. There's no secret about that, right? We just lost to Vanderbilt on the road. We lost to Florida bad on the road. It's a huge test. I mean, a huge test. And same old, right? We're looking for Chaz. We're looking how Chaz plays. We're looking how Igor plays in the game. But yeah, man, I like you say, dude. Like, if we have a shot to win at the end of the game, whether it bounces our way or not, especially on the road in the SEC, it's fine. Like, no big deal. It really isn't no big deal. It's gonna suck. It's gonna suck to lose, but at least it's gonna tell us, hey, we got a shot. We got a shot in this conference, and we got a shot in March because this is a team. If you can beat a team like Auburn, especially on the road, or at least hang tough with them, that's gonna show us what you can do in March. So yeah, man, looking forward to the game. Really looking forward to the game. College game day is going to be there. I mean, massive marquee matchup. Like you said, the Bruce Pearl storyline, things like that. So should be a fun one.
Gonna have to definitely stay in tune with that game, even if you're watching this podcast, you're a Tennessee fan. But if you so happen to not be, it's still, like you said, it's a marquee matchup. That's why College Game Day is there. So it's going to be a huge match to keep an eye on if you're a fan of basketball at all this weekend. because it's definitely massive. And I hope we show up. Like you said, at the end of the day, I hope we show up in a big way. And even if we lose close, at least be in a position to win. So would love to see that. Any other thoughts on Tennessee basketball or this upcoming week? Anything else for the
Nothing.
people?
Nothing. The only thing I have to say is shout out to special guest Brucey on the pod. I don't think it's his podcast debut, but he has been here in the background the whole time, being a good boy. So shout out to Brucey.
Got the doggo on the couch in the background. Honestly, that alone ups the quality of this podcast pretty significantly. So,
It does.
so shout out to Brucey, the doggo, for joining us on the pod. And folks, thank you all for you who are tuning in to the podcast. We appreciate you all listening. It's been a fun episode. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you're on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, give us a rating. We're starting to grow on Spotify a little bit. So, and for those of you who are listening on YouTube, look, I know YouTube is annoying because you can't keep listening to the audio if you close your phone or have it on the background or whatever. So pop over to Spotify. The Spotify link is in the description. Give us a follow on Spotify. We drop these episodes every week on both YouTube and Spotify. So give us a rating there. But if you're a YouTube person through and through, if you want to be able to see our beautiful faces, don't blame you there. So please give us a like, drop us a comment. It helps the algorithm. So we really appreciate you. But we appreciate you guys joining us for this episode. This has been a review of the big win against Mississippi State. We got into some nice, juicy football talk, and then we ended with the preview of the Auburn game. And folks, we will see you on the other side of that Auburn game. Until then, go Vols.
GBO.